Hello, and welcome to today's Business Goals webcast, developing your career's most important asset, you. Today, we're joined by Neil von Heupt from Australian Institute of Training and Development, and he is here to inspire us all to take action and put together a personal development plan that actually works. How are you today, Neil?
I'm well.
Great.
Totally looking forward to this.
Good. Yeah. We're very excited to have you here today.
It's really good.
Perfect. First off, Neil, we hear a lot about personal development plans all the time. Is there a problem here? Why don't they actually work for a lot of people?
Well, there's actually two problems.
Yep.
So the first problem is that people don't take ownership of them.
Okay.
It's something that comes down from above. Their manager says you need to make one of these. It needs to be yours,
yes.
Which is why I call this developing you. Okay.
Nice.
You need to take ownership. And the second problem is that people don't actually plan them. They're often just kind of ad hoc. They come together, you have a performance need, and so you go and do some training to fix that. Or an opportunity comes up, hey, I'll go and do a Redback webinar, and that's all good. But they're not actually intentional about what they're trying to learn. So those two problems together end up meaning that they don't work for people.
Great. Well, let's get into your presentation.
Sure. Okay. So it's funny, I was actually on the weekend just driving, and I drove past a beer commercial.
Okay.
And I went, that's it. Okay, that is what I'm talking about on Wednesday. Not the beer, but what they had in their ad was this simple phrase: Autopilot has an eject button. Okay, so often our careers are on autopilot. We're just kind of cruising along. And what I want to do today is to hit the eject button and to actually create a professional development plan for you that's intelligent, that is incremental, that kind of builds up, and that is smart, that's actually going to make a difference for what you're doing, okay? Often it's like what I call tradie syndrome, that the mechanic has the old car instead of the good car, or the plumber's taps are leaking. It's like that with our professional development plans, that we know what we should do, but we don't actually get in there and do it and have what we could have, okay? Down the bottom of the screen, during the course of the presentation, I put names of people who are good people to follow, good people to connect with. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But if you want to kind of take notes, then that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Laura Overton does some great research, and she put out a report last year that talked about how 90% of managers think that they need new skills, both for themselves and in their workplace. Less than 33% have those skills in-house. 54% of them provide continuing professional development, which is great, but only 37% of them have an actual learning plan. And that's something I think we need to do something about, and that's what we're here for today.
Wow. Great. So can you explain how your model is going to work for us?
For sure. Okay, but you're going to have to do a little bit of work. Okay. So now, if you all have joined us home, which is great, I'm hoping you got the message about having a piece of A4 paper handy. If you want to grab that and stick it on your desk, we're going to use that now.
Perfect.
I want you to draw two circles. Michael's going to work up here on the whiteboard next to me, so you can kind of see two circles. Leave a little bit of space at the edge so you can write some notes and things around them, okay? And what we're going to create here is your actual action plan coming out of this webinar. I don't just want you to sit and listen today. I want you to end up with something that you can actually work with, okay?
Yep.
Emma Weber, great person again to follow, talking about learning transfer. How do we take our learning and take it back to actual work? She says if there's no action plan, there's no learning transfer. Okay. So we're going to create an action plan because we want some transfer today.
Sounds good.
Okay, so on the first circle, I want you to mark it at north, south, east and west. So top and bottom on either side there. Okay.
Yep.
And your second circle over here, I want you to mark it at the top and bottom. Yep. And then at 2 and 4 o'clock, and same on the opposite side. And then on this one, I want you to join those ones up so they'll split that circle into 6. We're going to come to that circle in a tick. So the model that we're going to look at today, I call it the CPD wheel. It's got there's actually three wheels in one, okay? And we'll get to the third one right at the end when we start putting the plan together, okay? So there's 4 things that we have to think about when we start putting this professional development plan together, okay? So on this first one, I want you to draw an arrow going up to the number 12. The first thing that we need to establish in a professional development plan is what's our direction? Where do we want to be? Okay, so when you're thinking about your career, when you think down the track, where do you want to be? Often we end up places that we didn't plan to be. Okay, so we want to actually answer that question. Yep, direction, perfect. That's what we need. Okay. Yep. Now the second question that we want to ask here when we're establishing this purpose is, when do we want to be there? Okay. So you may be at the start of your career and you're going, okay, in 5 years' time I want to be in this kind of role, or in 10 years' time I want to be in that kind of role. But we need to give it a date or a time frame. So let's do a little arrow out to the side to the 3 there. So it now starts looking a bit like a clock, tick-tock, time's ticking. Where do you want to be and when do you want to be there? Okay. So the third thing that you've got to get there is just somewhere around the edge of that one, it doesn't matter where, just draw a little dollar symbol, okay? Because the third question is about dollars, okay? And it's not just about how many dollars you want to earn. It's a question of how many dollars will it take to get you moving. Okay, from where you are at the moment to where you want to be. Yep. Would you step outside your current role for a pay increase? You might step outside your current role for no pay increase at all. Okay. If it suits your direction. Okay. Yes. If you've answered the questions about direction and time frame, then the dollars one is part of the equation, but it's not necessarily the driver of it. Yep. Okay. And the last one is a question of desire. Okay. How much do you want this career? Okay. So when you're talking about the career that you want, how much do you want it? And what I want you to do there is, I actually want you to give yourself on a scale of from 0 to 10, 0, really don't care, you know, happy to just kind of doing what I do for the rest of my life, right up to 10 is, I want this career, I want to be doing that kind of thing. Yep. Okay. I was on the weekend, just saw this little guy and he was wearing an astronaut suit, you know, and I was like, awesome, you know, like he's got direction, he wants to be an astronaut. His desire for it at the moment is 10. He's wearing that astronaut suit everywhere he went, okay? So rate yourself on that. This is our first question. And the question for this is about being intentional, okay? Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about 3 things. We're going to talk about being intentional, about being intelligent, and about being incremental. This bit is about being intentional with your career plan. Where do you want to go? Mm-hmm. When do you want to be there? Yes. How much will it take to get you moving? Okay. And how much do you want it? Okay. So you've got to be able to answer those questions. We'll come back to that at the end when we start to pull this into the plan. So the second part of what we're going to talk about here is about being intelligent in our plan. And this is we're going to look at the 6 key areas around personal development, okay, professional development. So I want you up to this one, I want you to draw a little brain, okay? I'm going to go quickly through the model here so you understand it. Then I'm actually going to go into some strategies. That's a terrible brain. It's a terrible brain, I know. That's a piece of toast, you know.
And look, you guys, there will be copies of the slide deck and everything, so don't follow my drawings. I do apologize for them.
Okay, so I want you to draw a little brain up there. Now, over here on the right, I want you to draw a little heart. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing is talking about your knowledge. Do you actually have enough knowledge for this career that you want? Yes. Okay. The second area that we're talking about is your emotional intelligence. Now, we don't all like that, particularly us Aussie blokes. We're not kind of big fans of emotional intelligence. But we also know too many people who have great skills, they have great knowledge, but their emotional intelligence is actually holding them back in their career. Yep. So it is something that we need to pay attention to, okay? So the third one I want you to draw over here is a little network symbol. Yes. So this one that we're talking about, our networks, over 70% of the jobs that are going out there aren't actually getting advertised when you talk to recruiters. Recruiters are going and finding people, okay, and they find people through their networks, okay? So it's important that we pay attention to our network. We live in the social age, okay? So we can't avoid that now. We need to make that work for us.
Can't avoid it. You have to jump on it. Yep.
Now, a little pyramid over here. This little section is talking about our well-being, okay? And the reason we had to have a pyramid here, like I'm a learning and development person, have done my whole career. People would be confused if there was a presentation from the L&D person and it didn't have a pyramid. Okay. So but the pyramid, we're talking about our well-being. Now, some people, again, kind of go, well, why does that matter for my career? Well, let me give you a couple of examples. If you're too tired at work, then you're not going to be able to think straight. You're going to be cranky when you're interacting with other people, and your emotions are going to get in the way. So simple tiredness can have an effect. If you're not moving enough when you're at work, if you're just sitting at a desk all day, that's going to have an impact on your physical health down the track, and that could affect the sort of careers that you have. Okay, so we need to be paying attention to that stuff. This one's a little bit odd, okay? So I want you to draw me a little sailing boat, okay? I love sailing. I love getting out on the water. I haven't yet worked out how to make a career out of it. I've met some people who have, actually. They run sailing boats on Sydney Harbour and they do corporate days out on their sailing boats. I haven't got there yet. But sailing quite literally floats my boat. Okay. So this little section here is about the things that matter to you, like your purpose, your mission in life, what you're passionate about, that kind of stuff. Yep. There's kind of two ways you can come at this. Some people are passionate about something and they make a career out of it, okay? And other people make a career and then they become passionate about what they've made their career to be. Either is okay, okay? But what matters is having that mix of passion in there, okay? Because that's what's going to get you up in the morning. Yes. That's what's going to motivate you to actually chase this plan. And the last one over here, I want you to draw a shovel. Because the shovel is about your skills, like hard skills. When I started to work in a call centre environment, I'd never used Excel in my life, and suddenly I needed the skill of how to work a spreadsheet, and so I had to learn that, okay, and that became part of my planning there, okay. So this is all nice and theory, and we've got some nice little pictures now. Okay, so the next stage in what we do is where it starts to pack a little bit of a punch as a model. Okay, so what I want you to do, and people can see it coming up on the screen as well, is to draw a series of concentric circles coming out from the middle there. That's good, and people are doing this on their piece of paper. Feel free to catch up. So what we're talking about here is being intelligent when we're doing our plan. First bit's talking about being intentional. This bit's about being intelligent. Now, what I want you to do here is, and mix your colours up as you go, or if you've just got a pen, that's all good, but I want you to actually kind of rate yourself where you are at the moment in terms of your career. Do you have enough knowledge? If you've got tons of knowledge, you've done your PhD, you're set in that, then blow it right out there. Never done any formal qualifications, but okay, maybe it's not in there, but you've learnt lots of stuff over the years. So you start kind of filling that in. I'll kind of give people some examples and you can kind of fill them in where you're working. In terms of your emotional intelligence, do you have a good vocabulary for your feelings? Can you express yourself well? In terms of your network, is it wide? Are you connected with good people in the industry that you want or in the profession that you work in? So Michael's saying his emotional intelligence is good.
I like to think so.
He likes to think so. Okay, us Aussie males aren't necessarily as good as that. How's his network? It's coming up there. So I want you to rate yourself on this one, and because this is where the tool actually starts kind of pushing you a little bit to kind of say, okay, well, where do I need to plan? Okay, so what we're kind of doing in one sense is a gap analysis. Okay, we're starting to say, okay, well, I've still got some work to do in my network. I'm gonna put a bit of time and energy into that, or whatever it might be. Okay. This little model will help us to be intelligent about the plan that we create. Okay, I call it the CPD wheel. Okay, the continuing professional development wheel. And the question you've got to ask yourself once you've actually kind of got it coloured in is that how you want to roll? Okay, in terms of your career. Now, it's never going to be perfectly round. Okay, and that's okay. Okay, we don't necessarily. If you're doing a PhD, then this is blown out of the water and it's smashing everything else, kind of thing. But what we don't want to have is big gaps. Okay, so we want it to be a balance across these kind of areas. Okay, so that's what we call the CPD wheel, and we've got it all drawn now. There's my one coming up. Different ones. Hopefully, you've got your ones drawn now as well.
Okay, so we've looked at some of the actual steps. We looked at apologies, everyone, tongue time. What are some of the actual steps we can take in each of these elements?
Excellent. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take each of these 6 elements and using the slides that will come up on the screen, I'm just going to talk you through some practical steps. Because one of the problems with plans that people make is they make these grand plans. They're awesome plans, but they don't know how to get started on them. Okay. Now, when I was in high school, I was a bit of a maths nerd. I didn't particularly like it, but I was good at it. And one of the ideas that stuck with me was the idea of a cumulative error. Okay, which is where something's wrong by a little bit, but if you keep doing it over and over and over, it ends up being wrong by a lot. Okay. So what I want to talk about is a cumulative positive error. Okay, where what you're going to do is you're going to make a positive change, just a little one, but by doing it consistently, it will build up and have the impact that you want. Okay?
Nice.
If I said to you, would you be willing to spend 1% of your day on your career, that kind of sounds reasonable, doesn't it?
Yeah, very reasonable.
15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to give you is some things to do in 15-minute chunks that over time will build up to set you on the path to the career that you want. Okay?
Cool.
So let's have a look at these slides. Here we go with our personal learning plan. Okay? So we're talking about knowledge first. Okay? Now, in terms of knowledge, people have described the amount of knowledge coming at us as being like trying to take a drink from a fire hydrant. Okay, it's coming at us with such pace and with such ferocity, it's almost impossible to get a drink out of it.
Yes.
Okay, so we need to work with that. Okay, so the first thing you need to do with the amount of knowledge that's coming at us is you need to position yourself in terms of that stream, and the way you do that is by following good people. Mm-hmm. Okay, so as you follow good people, the content that starts coming at you starts being good content. I'm not interested in what you had for breakfast.
Yeah.
Okay. If you start posting that on LinkedIn or wherever, then I'm going to mute you. Okay. Because I need to position myself so that what's coming at me is quality content. Okay. So position yourself. The second thing you need to do with all this knowledge, and this whole process is what's called personal knowledge management. Okay. It's a really important skill in today's world. Okay. The second thing you need to do is curate that knowledge. Okay. I use a tool called Diigo, D-I-I-G-O. It's a great little bookmarking tool, and it allows me, when I read an article, I save the URL for it, where it's located, and I tag it with what it's about, just a single word. Mm-hmm. And what that allows me to do is to start grouping bits of information together, to start clustering them so that when I come back to them afterwards, I can actually kind of make a bit of sense out of them. The third step in the process is to contextualise that information. So where is it going to be useful to you? Okay? So is it going to be useful in the current role that you're in? Is it useful because of the industry that you're currently working in? Is it useful long-term for your career? Where's it going to find its place? And then the last thing to do is to actually share that with other people. Okay. So to work out, are there other people in your network who are going to find value in the sense that you've made out of curating the content that you've got? Now, the guy, I'm actually doing a course at the moment called Personal Knowledge and Management. It's with a guy called Harold Jarkey. His name's down the bottom. I participate in a Twitter chat, which is called PKM Chat, and it's headed up by Bruno Wink. And so if those people are of interest, if that's something where you've identified that your knowledge needs development, there's some good people to connect with. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is your network, okay? Your personal learning network, okay? This is really important. I had such a good experience last week. We've just introduced a thing called Yammer, which is what's called an enterprise social network. Yes. It's a way of people within a space communicating with each other. I didn't know a whole lot about it. So I posted up and I said, hey, can people recommend some good content? On Yammer, and for the rest of that day it was fabulous. I just had this stream of people coming back to me saying, this is a great person, here's a great article, here's a great video to watch, to the point where I even got Yammer responding to me to say, here's a great introduction to the tool, you know, and it was perfect. That came about through my personal learning network. Now the key to a personal learning network is promiscuity. Okay, that sounds a little bit funny, but you want to make sure that your network is wide, okay? Connect with anybody, okay? Make it a meaningful connection, but don't just connect with people who are the same as you, okay? On LinkedIn and on Twitter, find people out there right across all sorts of different industries, all sorts of different professions, okay? The other two things which are groups of people that we need are outliers. So people not just in the bell curve where they're in the middle and they're kind of saying things that everybody else is saying, but actually who are kind of exploring the edges a little bit of what's happening in the world kind of thing. Find some of those people. And I think you also need some contrarians. People who will argue with you, people who will take you to task when you post something. Oh, I'm not sure about that. Oh, hang on a tick, I've got a question about that. You need, those people are important in your network, so make sure you have some of them in there. A great way to build your network is to attend things, okay? So there's all sorts of events happening and meetups that happen all around Australia, every day, cities, major regional centres, you know, ways of connecting with other people. Networking events, they're called, you know. So get along to some of them, get along to conferences that happen around the place. There's conferences all the time. Do those, get along to those things and actually meet some people face to face. Working out loud is an interesting new thing, and I've put a couple of names down the bottom, John Stepper and Jane Bozarth. This is a new thing in the social age that we live in. It's about telling the story of your work, narrating your work, and doing it in such a way that's of benefit to other people and being generous and sharing that work. As you do that, as you make your work visible,
yes,
as you make it purposeful and as you're generous, that will build your network. People will kind of say, that guy's sharing some really good stuff, talking about some really good stuff. I'm going to connect with them and I'll share some good stuff with them as well. Okay.
Nice.
I'd say you need to join some things. You can do them on LinkedIn, join some groups that are on there. You can join Twitter chats. You can join communities of practice for the field that you're working in. Okay,
yes.
Important in developing your network. You can follow people. They call on LinkedIn. They're called influencers, like high-profile people. You can follow Richard Branson. I think you can still follow Steve Jobs. There's still stuff that's being posted from him. But follow those high people. Yeah. If you're interested in terms of your career in a particular company that you want to work at, follow that company. Find out who the key people are in that company. Send them a connection request. Always personalise it, but connect with those people. And to an extent, stalk some people, okay? Nice. So find some people where you go, I want to work for that guy. I want to work in that industry. Find those people, connect with them in a positive way and say, look, I'm interested in getting in this field. I just want to get my head around the space. Is it okay if we connect on LinkedIn? I've found that those people are more than happy to connect with you, okay? Find some people in-house as well. If you're in a big organisation, then maybe it's a senior manager, maybe it's the CEO, and connect with them in a real way. And they're, in my experience, they've been happy to help with people's networks and with people kind of doing what they want to do, okay? So that's about our personal learning network. What's cool with the network is as you grow the network grows.
Yes.
Okay? So as you work at it, take one step. So I set myself a target to say, I want to connect with one person on LinkedIn every week, okay? And I often exceed that, but I keep an eye out for people in my network who write something really good, and then I'll send them a connection, say, I really like that thing that you posted. Can we connect here on LinkedIn? So that's a little target, a little incremental step that I can take. I only started doing that about 18 months ago, 2 years ago kind of thing, and I recently just cracked the 500 mark, which is where they stop counting on LinkedIn, okay? So I've gone from having a network of 40 or 60 people over my whole career up to that point on LinkedIn, but once I started being incremental with it and approaching it regularly, that's totally expanded my network. My feed is gold. Most people, they look at their LinkedIn and go, oh, yeah, LinkedIn, whatever kind of thing. I love my LinkedIn feed. I love my Twitter feed because the content that's coming through is brilliant, okay? So our emotional intelligence. Okay, now this is a tricky one. We've got, a couple of blokes presenting today. We're not renowned for our emotional intelligence, but it is something that we need to pay attention to.
Yes.
Okay? And one of the best ways of paying attention to your emotional intelligence is to get a mentor, okay? Somebody that you trust to speak into your life and to say, this is where you're falling over. Okay? For me, I read a lot, and the guy down the bottom, Dr. Travis Bradbury, he's the best guy I've found. That's his Twitter handle on the left. He's constantly posting good stuff about emotional intelligence, written a great book about it, but I find the trickle feed of articles better than sitting down to read a big book. Day after day, I just read a bit of content, and that builds up my intelligence there.
I guess I'd say it's harder to find time to read an entire book, where if you're just getting fed your content, it's a lot easier. Nice.
And when I read it, I get Digo open and I tag it so that I know that's stuff about emotional intelligence. I'll write that one down kind of thing, okay? Now, feedback is important. It's tough. I mean, this guy saying last year, he had a wife and 3 children. Why does he need more feedback? And I was like, well, that's true, but what you need is feedback in terms of your career.
Yes.
Ask people, and in terms of your emotional intelligence. Ask somebody that you trust to give you some feedback to say, where could I get better on this? And the last thing is particularly for the blokes out there, we're not as good at having a vocabulary for our emotions. How do we feel? Angry, hungry. We haven't got a big range, so we want to try and expand that to be able to include some more finessed concepts in our vocabulary. So start kind of writing and see how big the list you can make of emotions that you might feel. Write down one a day. Start a list. What's an emotion that you could feel? And see how long you can go, okay? As I said before, I love sailing.
Yes.
It floats my boat, okay? And so there's my little sailing boat out in the middle there. This section about our values and our purpose and our passion is really important. Yeah. Values are the things that matter to you. Okay, what matters to you in terms of your career, in terms of your planning, what actually matters to you. We talked a bit about purpose at the start.
Yep.
Where do you want to be in your career? You know, and when do you want to be there? We talked a bit about passion earlier, okay, about the two angles you can come at it, follow your passion or create passion around what you're doing. Praxis is an interesting concept, and these last three are things that you can kind of do here. Okay, so praxis is a process of reflecting on what you're doing. So to say, here's what I'm doing, here's the first step, you know, what am I actually doing? And then the praxis process says, what am I actually, how's that working for me?
Yes.
You know, like, is this getting me what I want? Okay, and that's that process there. Affinity mapping is an interesting exercise, which I saw last year. Actually, I should probably have Dr. Denise Meyerson down on the bottom of the screen as well. She was the one who introduced me to this affinity mapping idea. And what you do is you get a whole pile of sticky notes and you write down all the things that kind of matter to you, all the things that are important. And then what you do, once you've got a whole pile of them out there, you just start grouping them. Okay, in affinities.
Yep.
Okay, what are the things that kind of cluster together? And then those things become a clearer picture of what are the things that matter to you, what's your purpose in life, and they will shape you there. Motivation is an interesting question. I've been thinking about this recently, and there's two people who really got me thinking, Daniel Pink and Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek's got his classic book about start with why.
Yep.
Why do we do what we do kind of thing, you know, and that's a question for us as individuals. It's a question for businesses as well kind of thing. It's a really important question in terms of our professional development plan. Okay,
yeah.
So we want to make sure that we're paying some attention to that. Look up those two guys and see what they're talking about. Scroll through those, sorry. Now, I mentioned the pyramid before.
Yes, you did.
And the pyramid, and I've put a big stamp on it. There is no pyramid.
Okay.
Okay? There is no pyramid when it comes to our well-being. There isn't one thing that's more important than all of those ones there. Okay?
Yep.
We need to be eating well.
Yep.
Okay? We need to be exercising. Okay? Now, you'll notice that the next one is that we need to be moving. Okay? Now, there's a difference here. Okay? We need to be moving because we're killing ourselves by sitting down in our lives constantly. Okay? And we actually need to be moving about and get a stand-up desk, move about the office a bit kind of thing. Exercise is something different. That's what we're talking about. Going for a walk, getting your heart rate up, heading to the gym, whatever it might be. We need to be doing some of that. We need to drink. I should lead by example and have a sip of my water.
It's funny, a friend of mine who's a trainer actually said the other day that sitting was the new sugar.
Yeah,
in more
absolutely.
places, because everyone's cut out the sugar, but too many people sit for 8 hours a day.
They do, they do, yeah. I was stoked. I got a stand-up desk recently. It's only a couple of $100 from Officeworks, and it's brilliant. Yeah. We need to drink lots of water. These are all the things that I talked about this before. We know these things are important.
Yes.
But we don't necessarily do them because they're too big. Okay, so in terms of hydration, let's take the example there of let's start with I'm going to drink a glass of water every day, because lots of people don't like drinking water initially. So you stick the glass on your desk, and you're going to drink a glass of water every day. Move, I'm going to stand up once an hour. We've got to break it down into little steps to actually kind of do it. Okay, exercise, that's a tough one, you know. But start small. I started with a walk, 3 years ago. I was using 2 walking sticks to walk. I'd injured my back, and the most I could do was walk. And I'm now going to the gym 5 lunchtimes a week, and it's built up that incremental thing, and that's working really well. We know we should go to the doctor for checkups. We know what the cancers are out there, and we like to stick our head in the sand and avoid them, but we simply need to make an appointment and go and do that one. We know we're supposed to get enough sleep, but we don't.
No.
We leave our lights on too late, and we sit on our screens till too late in our beds, and we don't get enough sleep. And we know we need enough playing and enough recreation in our lives, but I was at a meeting last week, and one of the guys asked me, and he said, "What are you doing for fun, Neil?" And it was a brilliant question, and I was actually pleased with my response, because I had a few things that I was doing for fun. I was like, that's good. I don't want to ever be in a place where I can't answer that question. But I thought, that was such a cool question. So the pyramid is out. All of these things matter. And what I want, if you're working on your piece of paper at home and you've written that kind of little list down, you will get it later in a copy of the slides, but if you've written that down, I want you to circle one of those things, just one of them, and say, this is the one that I'm going to do something about, okay? So whichever one it is, choose one, and you're going to do something about it. So our skills, okay? Might be straight up as digging with a shovel that I've got on the side of the thing there. We need skills for the roles that we have. We need skills for the roles that we want.
Yes.
Okay? And the main tool that I like to use when we're talking about skills is what's called gap analysis, okay? Is to work out where are the gaps in your skills. But it can be tricky because we don't know what we don't know. You know, I don't know what skills I might need for a role. So what I've listed there are places where you can go and find skill lists for people who are in the role. So if you know somebody who's in the career that you want, in the role that you want, jumped onto their LinkedIn profile and look at the skills that they have. And then do a bit of a gap analysis with your skills and say, okay, well, what skills am I missing out of that set, and are they skills that I can develop? When you look at your colleagues, if you're in a bigger business, and you look at the person who's next up the ladder from you where you want to be, what are the skills that that person has? If you're not sure what they are, jump onto their LinkedIn profile and say, well, what are the skills that they're listing? Okay. When you look at job ads and you open up the job descriptions, go and have a look and say, well, what are the skills in those jobs? Could I apply for this job at the moment? Okay, by looking at the job description. And that'll give you a good sense of what your skills are. And then you can start working on developing those skills. Okay?
Sounds good. So how do we use all these steps to create an actual plan? That's probably the big question to ask.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we've now got the things that we need. Okay,
Yes.
So we've got this question about intention in our head. We've got this question about being intelligent and incremental. They're the kind of three things that we've got to hold together when we do a plan. Now, the key with the plan, though, is it's part of a whole, what's called a personal learning ecosystem. Like it's a big picture. And the thing with an ecosystem is, or an environment you could use there, is that they're complex.
Yes.
Like they are. And it's personal as well. Like this is, your learning plan is going to be different to my learning plan.
Yes.
Okay? How you write your learning plan is going to be different to how I write my learning plan. Okay? But what's important is that we use these elements, okay, and that we start writing. Now, I want to give you the third wheel here, okay? So on this left-hand one, let's go back to the board here.
Yep.
I want you to extend that 3 o'clock arrow right out the side. So we're going to break that circle into kind of 4 quadrants, okay? So
Down?
yeah,
Yep.
down there and there, okay? So the first one I want to write in is your role. Okay. So when we're thinking about this planning, some of the planning is just directly for the role that we have at the moment. Okay. What do I need to do the job that I'm doing now?
Yes.
Okay. The next thing is, what's the profession that you're in? So I work in learning and development. I've got mates who work in management. Okay? I was talking with one on the bus the other day, and he's in management. He currently works in financial services, but he could equally apply his skills in the healthcare sector, anywhere else. Okay. So the third section that we're talking about here is what's your industry. Okay. So currently, his industry is in financial services.
Yep.
Okay. Sometimes there's an overlap. So for me, there's an overlap. My profession is learning and development. My industry at the moment, by working for the Australian Institute of Training and Development, is learning and development. So there's an overlap, and that's okay. That happens. And the last section is your career. Okay. So when you start making these plans, you've got to have a think and say, and you can use a similar process here in terms of kind of grading how much of your professional development is just about your role.
Okay. I gotcha.
So how much is just... So once you start kind of mapping it out in your plan, this little tool will help you to kind of reflect and go, oh, man, I'm only doing professional development for the job I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything to get to that career that I want.
Yes.
Okay? So we've got to make sure that we're actually covering all of our bases when we do the plan. And then that will allow us to actually use this feedback as well to say, okay, here's what I need to develop, okay? And then we map this one, and then we map it against the original stuff about our intentions and where we want to be, okay?
Nice.
And together we can actually then make a personal learning plan, okay? Now, Here's how you do it.
Okay.
Okay. You have to create some space. So you notice this guy's sitting in the middle of nowhere. Okay. He has to create some space to be able to create the plan. Okay. Often we're so busy doing work. It was actually what somebody wrote in, why they wanted to do today's session. I'm so busy doing the day-to-day stuff of my job, I just never take enough time to actually do this kind of plan. If you want to create a plan, you have to make some space to do it. Okay. Now, and the key, and you'll notice what this guy, he's writing. Okay. I've planned probably only for the last 3 years where I want to be. And what started was writing it down. Okay? And so I've now got a written plan which has developed every year, but I write it down, and that's really important. When you start in this first section on intention, like where do you want to be, when do you want to be, that kind of stuff, there's two sorts of goals that you need to actually kind of put in there. We all know about SMART goals.
Yes.
Okay, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time frame.
Yes.
We all know those kind of things. But to be honest, we're a bit bored with them. Okay. I'm not going to get out of bed in the morning for some SMART goals. Okay. So the second ones are what I call the oh my goals. Okay. So these are ones where where if we achieve them, we would be at the OMG. I've done this, I've got here, okay? So we've got to make sure we have some of them when we start thinking of our direction. We've got to make sure we have them in our plan. Now, in terms of writing, it doesn't matter how you write it out, okay? You might like Excel spreadsheets, and you're going to put it all into a spreadsheet. Okay?
Yes.
You might like lined paper and orderly things, or a Word document where you can build it into a table. I like blank art paper. And I mind map and I draw like this, and I'd put my purpose in the middle, and then I'd put the 6 elements around the outside in different shapes, and I'd draw. And it doesn't matter how you do the plan, but what it matters that you do the plan, and that you commit yourself in writing to what you're going to do. Okay. So you need to be intentional.
Yes.
Okay. So there's 3 elements to actually creating this plan. You've actually now got what you need to write the plan. I can't write your plan. Okay, you have to write your plan. Your boss can't write your plan. Okay, he may be interested in it. Okay, he may be interested because it will affect your role. He may be interested because it will affect your career progression potentially within a company. He may be interested in it because if you do well, he will look good.
Yes.
Or she will look good. Yeah. So they may be interested, but at the end of the day, you've got to own it. It's got to be your plan. Even to the point where when I store the file for mine, I have a folder on a USB, and it says personal. And that's where my personal learning plan goes. It doesn't go onto the network drive at work. It's useful at work, totally helps at work, okay, but it's my plan.
Yes.
So it's on my USB, and it's in my personal folder, because I want to own this plan, I want to make it mine.
By sharing the personal plan with, say, your manager or a colleague, would that help make you accountable for what you're trying to do, so to help you stay along that path?
Yeah. There's, I guess, in one sense, people can be cautious around that, to flag to their manager that, they're planning to leave, kind of thing.
Yes.
A good manager will have your best interests at heart. But we all know there's not good managers everywhere, so use a bit of wisdom when it comes to actually who you share it with, kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. That sense of accountability can be really helpful. The reason I actually wrote my first plan was because in a Twitter chat where we were talking about these things, random person in America said, accountability would be good. And I said, okay, I'll take you on that in 3 weeks' time we will both just share with each other what we've written down.
Oh, nice.
And that's what got me over the line, was to actually know that in 3 weeks' time...
You had to hand it to someone.
I had to, and I haven't heard from them since. We had a bit of dialogue around it then, kind of thing. Haven't heard from them since. That's fine. Yeah. But it got me over the line to actually put something down into writing. So you need to be intentional about it. You need to be intelligent about it, not just haphazard in terms of your planning, not just, here's an opportunity, or, I've got a problem, I need to fix that. And you need to be incremental about it. Don't get overwhelmed by how much there is. Break it down into little steps that will build up over time to actually get you the career that you want.
I really like that point, the incremental one.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it?
That's my thing.
That's your thing?
This is... this for me has been such a good tool. It's kind of been almost my life's work.
Yes.
You know, like it's developed over a whole long period of time to get to the stage where it is now, and for me it works. You know, even the fact that I'm presenting here today has been part of my plan. You know, that I said I wanted to be doing more presenting in my role than what I'd done previously, and so I attended a course on presentation skills and with AITD, and that's been part of the process for me to actually presenting here, presenting at some conferences, being deliberate and intentional about the plan. So.
Well, it's been absolutely great having you. We are taking questions from the online audience, so please, guys, do submit your questions. I particularly love the whole networking element of it because I only really discovered that later on in my career, and the actual value and the importance of really keeping up to date with it, but also the personal messages. I used to always just shoot off the impersonal messages to people to connect with.
I'd like to add you to my network.
Exactly. So we did get a good question, and going back to that, is this plan also applicable to someone who's just started in their career? Absolutely.
Yeah. It was interesting. I had a friend of mine on the weekend. He's an older guy, and he was saying he'd noticed that a lot of kind of people towards the tail end of their career, they're just cruising. Yeah. You know, and he said, how do I sell it to them to end well? Yeah. You know, to not just kind of cruise in. So this planning, I actually think it's like we need to do it at every stage of our career. We need to do it when we're starting. We need to sit down and say, let's look at what's the role that I currently have, what's the profession that I want to be a part of, what's the industry that I'm working. We need to set some plans within that. One of the things which actually I forgot to mention on the way through is it was actually back at that slide where we had the guy sitting writing, we had SMART goals and we had the oh my goals kind of thing, is that there was deliberately some space in the middle there, okay? And that space is for what I call serendipitous space, okay? Which is, we don't know everything that's going to happen in our career. We don't necessarily want it all to be completely mapped out. Yes. Okay, we need to be open to opportunities that come up, to new things, you know, the new jobs that are coming out there. Augmented reality, virtual reality, robotics, you know, there's a whole field of jobs out there. We need to be open to those changes in how the modern workplace is functioning. Yep. But I think that strategy of being intentional, intelligent, incremental, I think that absolutely works at the start of your career, but it absolutely works at the tail end of it as well. Definitely. So that we finish well, that we don't just wind down and cruise our way out. Yeah.
For those people out there who have, unfortunately, and I've been in this position in the past myself, but when you're in a position where it's soul crushing, would you put a measurement in there to saying, look, if I ever rate myself below a 3 on this, I have to change jobs?
It's a really personal thing, isn't it? Yeah. How much is it costing you in terms of the thing with these different areas is they're all connected. Yeah. And so if you're feeling soul crushed in that thing, your capacity to learn stuff is going to be reduced. Yeah. Your willingness to engage with other people and to build that, it's going to be it's hard slog kind of thing. So it's not just within that sector that you've got to pay attention to, because you've got to pay attention to the effect that is happening on the rest of your life, you know. And if you start thinking in terms of your well-being over here and your mental health, you know, the incidence of depression in Australia, then if this is taking a hammering, then you've got to be paying attention over here to kind of pick up the slack in these other areas.
It's a whole balancing act.
Yeah.
So look, guys, we've got a couple more minutes, so if you do have any questions that you want to ask us, please send them through. Also, we'd really appreciate your feedback. So on the top of your screen next to the slides is a feedback survey button. So if you could take a moment, we find that information and that feedback invaluable, so we'd love to get it from you. Is there any final notes that you'd like to leave the audience with today around everything we've talked about creating your plan, how you should be looking at it, just as an ending point for them? No? Well, you have covered a lot.
What I would say is that this is a work in progress. Yes. So I kind of came up with the CPD wheel about 18 months, 2 years ago kind of thing, and I first kind of wrote about it then. It's gotten better. Okay, and it will keep getting better. And so I'm happy to be in contact with people after the thing. So I'll bring up a couple of things. So I have a blog where I process some of this kind of stuff. One of the early ones actually has the original CPD wheel on it, which has since developed. That's there. And I have, as Michael discovered, trying to pronounce a slightly unusual name. There's just me. So if you Google me, you will find me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to connect, but don't just send me I'd like to add you to my network. Send me hey, I heard you on that webinar with Redback. That was awesome. Then I'll be happy to connect. Kind of thing. And if you have questions afterwards, then yeah, I'm happy to engage. I love doing this stuff. Yes. I love creating space for people to flourish and become kind of who they want to be. That's why I do what I do, and I'm happy to do that outside of this kind of space as well. So,
Well, that's awesome. To Helen, yes, you can rewatch this webinar. In about 24 hours, we will send out a follow-up email with the link to the recording. For everyone else out there, you will receive that email as well. This will be hosted for 12 months at least, potentially even more, because the topic is definitely relevant. We've got one more question. Are all of these sections in the CPD wheel equally important? Also, what does CPD stand for? So CPD stands for Continual Professional Development. So that's taking your professional life further using this wheel. Yeah. So are all of these equally measured?
Yes, but at different times and different stages in your career, then they're going to have a different emphasis. So when you're starting out in a career or in a particular industry, you're going to need to build up your knowledge and your skills, particularly kind of thing. This stuff about your well-being and your health, that's big picture. That's stuff that you pay attention to right across your career. If you're shifting roles, then your network becomes, you've got to put more work into that. So it kind of varies according to what stage of your career you're at. You've just been retrenched, then you've totally got to work your networks kind of thing. But really, actually, you want to be working your networks before you get retrenched.
Yes.
Don't set up your LinkedIn profile when you need a job. Set up your LinkedIn profile, do all of this kind of work before you need a job, and then you actually can step onto that path of the career that you want, rather than the one that you end up with. I constantly ask people random people and they say, oh yeah, chatting to the butcher. I'm like, did you always want to be a butcher? How did you end up here? Chatting to the hairdresser. And have you always hairdressed? No. I studied engineering. People's career paths go all over the place, kind of thing, and that's okay. But we want to be the ones who's choosing that path, rather than it just kind of happening to us.
Perfect. Well, look, I know we're running out of time, and I don't want to take up anyone else's time, but we'll answer one last question. How do you convince people in other industries that you have transferable skills for their industry, despite not having worked in it before?
Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah.
You can't get the job because you don't have the experience, and you can't get the experience because
you don't have you've never been there before.
So part of it, I would say, would come back to this idea around networks. Is connecting in with those people, and to start. Often you need to learn the language of a new industry, that they use all these terms and that kind of thing. You may need to do some formal training courses to make what you know visible. It doesn't have to be a degree to be visible knowledge that you've been. When somebody looks at your LinkedIn profile, are you connected with anybody? Are you listening to anybody in that industry at the moment? So you can pay attention to it, and you can make it more visible. We do a thing with digital badges where short courses and the kind of stuff that you do in continuing professional development, where you can actually capture that and it shows up on your LinkedIn profile, and it makes it look visible to other people. So
Perfect. Well, great. Neil, thank you so much for today. It was a great session. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed yourselves as well. I do want to remind you guys to look Neil up. Definitely connect with him. And thank you all again for joining one of our Business Goals webcasts. Cheers and have a great day.
Thanks for joining us.